From what I can gather from what people have been saying with Shadows is, especially from some reports that came out, is it does not seem like Shadows sold as well as Ubisoft needed it to. Like, the impression definitely seems... Because I remember when people were talking about it, how they were using some very odd language about it, how they were saying things like, oh, you know, like, player activations. They weren't saying, like, copies sold. They were saying, like, oh, we've had this many activations. It's like, that's not how you should talk about your game going live, though. Like, that just... Something about that seemed off. Just something about the choice of language about how they described Shadows was just awkward. Not really sure how to place it. Yeah, no, like, if there's one thing I've learned when it comes to corporate stuff is that, like, if they succeeded, they wouldn't feel a need to be defensive about the numbers and how it actually performed. Like, when a game does well, I don't think you actually need to have discussion about how well it's done or not. You don't have this weird air of uncertainty and defensiveness about its performance. You generally just kind of be like, yeah, no, it performed well. Okay, cool. But, like, when it gets defensive, when the language around it gets obtuse, I feel like that's a sign that something's up. Yeah, exactly. It's not sales figures. Like, how many times were they counting copies from people who played the game through Game Pass, through the Ubisoft Plus subscription? Right? Like, that's a thing. Like, were they just counting the amount of times that people turned the game on to play through a subscription service? That's part of it. Is like, when the language gets obtuse, it's very much a sign to me that they're not hitting the sales numbers that they actually want to be hitting. And considering some of the news about deals Ubisoft has been making as of late, that's not a good sign in my book. Like, from impressions of how people who play the game seems like at least an okay, like, 6 out of 7. Like, no, 6 or 7, maybe a 5 at worst. But my thought was, like, well, Ubisoft doesn't want this game to be a 5 or a 7. They needed that shit to be, like, a 9 or a 10, even. Like, they needed it to be good. Which, if it's not good, if it's just then that's not what Ubisoft needs. Like, that's just my thought as someone who doesn't really have a lot of interest in playing the game and just sort of, like, is floating around the news about it. Yeah, that's sort of where my opinions end when it comes to Shadows. Is like, I'm not interested in it, but it probably didn't do what it needed to.
Why are you here? Get down! A rather odd one.
The last one. Assassin's Creed Shadows is a good game, but in my opinion, the only bad thing is when you finish the game, you get all the sessions, which is in every game the GOAT himself. Again, it's like, I think the main thing is I did watch some reviews about Shadows too. Like, I think one of them I recently watched was like another VTuber. I'm stupid and blinking on names, but it was like, I feel like if a game opens up on, like, getting you into shops, I don't like that vibe of, like, oh yeah, hey, let's make it to where one of the easiest things to get into in our single-player game is the microtransaction shop. And, like, as I know some people noted, like, too, like, Valhalla, for example. Valhalla made Ubisoft a lot of money, but that was because of the microtransactions. That wasn't because, like, the game the game sold well, yeah, but it also was, like, you know, loaded to the brim with microtransactions, and people bought a lot of that. Because microtransactions make a lot of money. That's just how it is. As frustrating as it is to talk about. Okay, come on. Come on, that should have been easily... the hook blade should have made that climbable, but whatever. So it's like... It seems like this weird thing with Shadows, and, like, I don't even care about, like, the weird controversies about, like, cultural things where it's just like, yeah, there's some stuff in Shadows that was like... I understand why it wouldn't go over well with, like, people, with, like, actual people in Japan, where they see something and it's like, Oh, Valhalla did double dip, actually, if I remember right. Didn't Valhalla have a season pass? Like, I don't remember, because I know it had microtransactions. Didn't they also give it, like, a whole ass season pass system, too? So it was like crazy microtransactions, DLC expansions, season passes. So like they put everything in that they could to monetize that game. Jesus. Because like I was browsing the PlayStation Store, looking at some like the seasonal deals, and I saw Valhalla. I was like, okay, it has like paid expansions, like okay, but damn. So yeah, cosmetic microtransactions pack, expansion packs, season passes. God, yeah, that is aggressively monetized. Like holy shit, and it's a single player game too. That is a far cry too, because I know that for example in AC Unity. Is that like AC Unity had its DLC expansion, Dead Kings, and they offered that one for free, both because of some sales projections, but also because of like a way to make sure that it's like, oh hey, because because they gave out the Dead Kings DLC for free, because of what happened in France with the Notre Dame burning down. It was like, yeah, we should probably be a bit fair about this.
The strings of fate have drawn us together.
Duccio? Alright. Well, hey, at least we got some medicine off of that guy. Anyway, onward! Game mechanics sounds like the devs do not know how to do anything with the game because they know only one game. See, okay. That is the thing I would note, is that it's this idea, in my opinion, that, Assassin's Creed in an open world setting, I think that's the thing, right? I think that's the thing to note, is that pitting Assassin's Creed into massive open worlds, I think, is the problem when it came to, like, the RPG systems. Is that, like, for example, for me playing Unity, I feel like Unity actually works despite its issues. Like, Unity is a game that needed more polish, in my opinion. Right? Is that Unity's base mechanics, like the skeleton they were working off of, this improvement on what they had going from, building off of, like, what they'd done in 3 and 4 and whatever, was a good base to continue the series off of, in my opinion, right? So when you got to this point where it's like, okay, well, let's, like, redo because, again, this is, like, the Ubisoft and shitification problem, is that, like, all their products are functionally speaking identical. Is that because modern Ubisoft only knows how to do open world games nowadays, it's like, oh, let's just take Assassin's Creed and put it into a massive open world. It'll be totally fine. It's like, yeah, but, like, that's not exactly, like, you know. Like, I mean, AC has always been kind of, like, soft open world elements, obviously. Like, it's a map that you have full, power to explore at your own pace with side activities, collectibles, yada yada. Like, Assassin's Creed was kind of the basis of a lot of what we would call modern Ubisoft tropes. But it's like this basic thing of it where part of why it works in these games and in Unity too, because Unity is a big game. Don't get me wrong, Unity is big. But it's that everything is contained, right? Unity is contained in a one-to-one recreation of Revolutionary era France, which is big, but still focused. It's tight, it's compact, there's still some slightly annoying stuff, but hey. But it's like, then you get to, like, say, ancient Egypt, where you have the towns by the Nile and everything, and the pyramids and all that stuff. It's like, okay, that's cool, but, like, there's a lot of unnecessary open space when it comes to that. Which is, I think, is the thing with a lot of the RPG games so far, is that they're too focused on, like, oh, what's at the big open world of collectibles and all this stuff and places to explore. And it's like, yeah, but, like, that doesn't allow for a lot of, like, good Assassin's Creed. Like, I've seen people say this with Odyssey, right? They said Odyssey is an alright RPG, but a bad Assassin's Creed game. Like, as an open world RPG, it's pretty okay. But from the perspective of being an Assassin's Creed game, it's dicier.
Beautiful, no?
Like, if you want an open world Greek RPG with crazy mechanics and gods and stuff like that, then yeah, Odyssey is a good time. But if you're trying to be like, oh, Assassin's Creed, it's going to be a little... not exactly. Yeah, there is a price thing, like, when it comes, like, okay. Like, me and Schrodinger were, like, both in a Discord server together, and we've, like, talked about this in there ad nauseum. Is that, like, when it comes to game prices, I think there is a thing, right? And I've seen other, like, YouTubers that I follow talk about it, too. It's like, yeah, okay. Game prices have been up for a while, technically. Like, we've been paying $70 for a while. we've been playing more than 70, like, especially if you get special editions, right? Like, don't get me wrong, as I've seen it put this way, is like games have been costing more than what even the companies want to put as like a base price for years, right? Special editions, deluxe editions, ultra special mega editions, like that go upwards of 100 to more. Like that has been the norm for years. Like $70 to $60 is no longer just like the normal price of a game. No, that is the base price. That is the base asking price. Let's be totally real here. $60 to $70 is no longer a base market value. That is the base edition price. That is the, oh, hey, we start from here. 3. Yeah, that okay. We'll talk about it more when we get to 3 because as an American myself, obviously, I think I have a lot of room to actually talk about that. Oh yeah, no. Oh yeah, no. Look, okay, here's the thing. If I buy a special edition of a game, I'm doing that because I'm really interested in the game and I want to support the developers. Like, I bought the special edition of Bandai's Sin Duality Echoes of Ada because I really want that game to be good, and it is good. It just needs some extra work done to it. Like, and they are doing that to it. So I bought that special edition of the game because I want it to be supported and I don't want to just die in a year. But if I do, then it... Now, oh, no. Actually, I remember something really fun. The first Berserker Kazan. That was by the Dungeon Fighter people, Neopla. And what they did something really interesting, actually. Oh, cool. My family line traces back that far, too, actually. My great-grandma did that, so I have I've got both Indian ancestry and, like, main Revolutionary War ancestry, so I have all of the claims to say, hey, if I want to talk about the American Revolutionary War, by God, I have license to talk about that shit. Because I got blood from a lot of Americans. So my ancestry is like, yeah, no, I have full license to talk about all of that shit as much as I want to, in any perspective. But, so, okay, to get my point earlier, to kind of be on the whole game pricing thing, is the first Berserker Kazan did an interesting thing I haven't actually seen many other games do, where the special edition is the $70 price, is the one at the $70 price tag. Meanwhile, its base edition is actually at a reduced price. So, like, you would only be paying the full, like, $70 if you wanted to get it to play early or some special deluxe edition content. Meanwhile, like, it's $40 if you just get the base standard edition. But it's, like, that full 60 to 70, which I think is really interesting. Because, like I said, nowadays, $60 to $70 is just the price of the base edition of the game, because modern games, especially in the AAA industry, aren't in a standard basic edition anymore. That's more the AA to indie scene in terms of, like, oh, hey, here's, like, a base standard version of the game at a static price based on current MSRP. Now, the AAA industry has been doing, like, editions basically for the last 2 decades. Like, I don't know exactly when it started. I think it was, like, around the 2010s when that shit started. But that's how it's been basically since. So, games have always been more expensive. They have gotten around the whole base market value. What Nintendo has opened with their whole, oh, hey, we want to start charging $80 to $90 for our, like, main first-party titles, is what they've done is open the gates to a higher base edition cost, which is going to start pricing people out. Because, like, already $60 to $70 is already a pretty big ask for some people. Meanwhile, like, oh, hey, we got up to, like, freaking, over $100. Oh, yeah, no, like, exactly that. Like, yeah, the rising production costs, the, inflationary things, like, sales are always by this thin margin in terms of profit, which is, like, it's not sustainable. It is not sustainable. Like, games being made for productions at, like, hundreds of millions of dollars is far from a sustainable business model, and I feel like we are going, like, the bubble has already been straining. Like, I've been in discussions about this, that, like, the video game industrial complex is at a very strong point of the bubble being so close to bursting. Yeah, no, it has to crash at some point. And I think the crash is going to come because big AAA industries are going to start pricing people out. I genuinely think that if we see a second video game market crash, it's going to be because of what is like starting with Nintendo increasing the base prices of their games. We're going to see people get priced out, games will become way too expensive, and no one's going to buy them. Like, you're going to get to a point where the base asking price of a game gets so high that not even people who would buy special editions are going to be willing to do it. Like, people just aren't going to want to do it because it's going to be too much. It's going to be too much, and people just don't have the money. Okay, first try. So that's just going to become the problem. Is that there is too much money being asked for, and people, like, even people who buy luxury products because they do, like, people who are totally willing to spend hundreds of dollars just casually are going to start kind of like, what I think is going to happen, because for those who may not remember, is back then, like a few decades ago, even when prices were technically lower, okay, basically you got to keep it as like this thought, is that back then, like back even in the late 90s, games used to be almost like a third. Yeah, oh yeah, AA will definitely take over. Okay, to pause real quick. Basically, back during the days of, say, like the Nintendo 64, the PlayStation 1, hell, even moving into the PlayStation 2, games used to be like a third to half the price of the console itself, which back then was a lot. Like, that was still really expensive. Like, if a game is almost half the price of the console you're buying it for, that's a lot of money to ask, and it's why parents would often be so loath to buy games for their kids, because, like, they already spent $120 on the console. I already got you 2 games. Why aren't those good enough? And nowadays, with the way prices have gone up for everything, with consoles getting to hundreds of dollars, it's like, yeah, you're still at a fraction of the console cost, but, like, by comparison, still that. Like, yeah, if you count inflation, technically speaking, yes, games are cheaper than ever, but the market is also bigger than ever. That's why I'm not a big fan of the proponent of, like, oh, well, when you take into account inflation, games really should have had their base price increased a long time ago. I'm like, but there's market. Oh, yeah, no, exactly that. Like, back then, like, hell, even just 2 decades ago, back in the 2000s, like, games would be pitting. Okay, hell, just Assassin's Creed. Just Assassin's Creed here. They spat out 1, 2, Brotherhood, Revelation, 3, 4. All of those games were within, like, a year or two of each other in terms of production time. I think, like, the longest production gap between any major Assassin's Creed game until recently was like 2 or 3 years at most. And like they would slam these games out, and they were all pretty damn good with a few hiccups. Like, obviously, like 3 had its issues, as Schrodinger brought up. And like, again, we'll talk about 3's issues when we get to 3, trust me. But it's like, back then it wasn't hard for games to be produced like just constantly, and now it's like, oh hey, Pat and Wooly were actually talking about this. I need to finish it, one of their latest podcast segments, because I only watch their podcasts and clips. They were talking about it too, how like even just a few years ago that like Resident Evil used to be a yearly franchise. Like, you used to get Resident Evil games every year. Like, back during the Xbox and the Xbox 360 and PS3 games, we were getting like a new Resident Evil game constantly from 4 onwards. Like, from 4, 5, 6 to 6, it was like a constant release cycle. But nowadays, with how high the production costs are and the size of the teams on AAA studios, it's like, it's why these games take so long for them to produce, because it's just like, oh hey, let's just have it where these games have to be these massive experiences that take like 60 to 80 hours for basically no reason. Like, oh yeah, no, exactly. Like, that was the thing. Like, these games shared an engine, so production was really easy. You just had to produce some new assets while the engine work was basically there. You could improve on the engine where you could, to say maybe improve physics or upgrade some other systems, and bam, bam, boom. Now it's like, part of the other problem is the turnover rate in the dev industry, I believe. Like, I mean, people have talked about it more. People way more qualified have talked about, like, the sheer process of how of just the amount of layoffs that happen in the game industry nowadays, which, I mean, you get people who want to try and do the excuse of like, oh, well, they do layoffs because it's like, it's so expensive nowadays. It's like, no, they do layoffs because the executives won't take a cut to their pay. Like, you don't need to pay executives who don't do a whole lot more as much money as they get paid, but we do. And if these people just took pay cuts and took, I don't know, a smaller six-figure salary instead of a whatever they have now, we could probably save a lot of these crews, but they don't. Like, I know one thing that I saw got talked about is that, okay, hold on. Okay, this isn't hard, I can talk about this. Is that for Apex Legends just released a new character, as they do like every other season. And the lady who wrote the story for that character got fired in the Respawn layoffs like the day after the character was released. Oh that's exactly that. Like, onboarding is expensive in this industry too. Like, in the gaming industry, onboarding is not cheap because you got to teach them a whole lot of stuff. And that means that you can have a new employee who's not able to actually do any solid work for just months. Because, well, now they have to learn all the stuff. They have to learn the engine. They have to learn, like, all these other things, which means they might not be able to actually assist on the major project going on in the company for a long time. So, at that point, with high turnover and high learning costs for new employees, it creates an industry that I think is why we have a lot of these problems. Like, it feels like it's why so many of these corporations have swapped over to using the Unreal Engine, because, well, just have a universal engine that you don't have to do a whole lot, and then boom. At least they think it'll make it easier. Also, damn, we go from a tower to a cave. Oh yeah, no, exactly. Unreal and Unity had good point, Sherner. Unreal and Unity have the market share they do because they're easy to access. They're easier to get people into because you can just tweak the engine to get the things you want. Like, all you have to do is tweak the engine. Like, EA tried to do that too. Like, EA tried to get all of their production companies under their wing on using Frostbite. And part of the problem is that, like, Frostbite isn't a bad engine, but it's built for FPS games. And so, for example, when BioWare had to start using it to make, say, Dragon Age Inquisition, they basically had to rebuild the engine because it just wasn't built for an RPG. So it just created this problem where, like, you have some people where, like, they're using an engine, but it's not built for the kind of game. Like, this is why I still prefer, like, RGG Studios, the people who make the Yakuza or / Like a Dragon franchise. Part of the reason why they can do so well is because they have an in-house engine that they know what they're doing with it, they know how to teach people how to use it, and they know how to improve on it whenever they need to. Like, the Dragon engine is just basically a perfect, like, example of, like, a modern in-house engine that gets the job done. And they've used on most of their main projects, aside from, I think, like, Gaiden, which I think they did... No. It wasn't Gaiden, it was, not Kenzan, that's the other one. It was... the historical one. I forget the exact title of it because I'm dumb. But, like, the one where you play as, like, not Kiryu, but, like, where you're the Shinshin Gumi. They did that one in Unreal when they remade it because it was, like, I think it was already built in some form of Unreal to begin with originally. So, rather than tweaking it for Dragon Engine, which is more built for, like, that kind of nighttime city aesthetic that they use for the main games, they just did the remake for that in Unreal. Because, yeah, it makes sense. But, like, that is part of the reason. That is part of the continuous problem with the industry, is, like, everything's being homogenized, and yet also the turnover rate is enough that you don't exactly teach people, like, most games will use, like, a purpose-modified or built engine for what they do. That is part of the whole production cost thing. Now, obviously, I can't act as if I know a lot of it. I don't know enough about the industry economics to give a proper full opinion. Any opinion I say is just from someone who's on the outside, who, like, pays attention to data, who listens to what more qualified people have to say, and it's generally okay, well, this makes sense. That's sort of my view on a lot of this stuff. Is that it's based purely on, like, what other people who know way more than I do, who are way more plugged in, are able to kind of aggregate and say, yeah, this is generally what's going on, what we can get, besides what's behind the scenes that, like, you're just not allowed to learn about because of things like NDAs and shit. So, there is some grain of salt to be taken, because it's purely just an opinion based on, like, well, here's relatively what I have an idea of. But, you know. it is why I do think, though, again, as Schroeder said, there's gonna be a market crash. I don't know when it's gonna happen, but it's gonna happen. And it's gonna be either, if not this console generation, definitely the next one. Because there is no way the big industry can keep going the way it is without having something crash on it. And I bet it's going to be because people get priced out. Like, if the first crash was because of overproduction and because there was no way to keep up with, like, just the sheer market of shovelware that happened, like, that was kind of it. This market share crash is going to be because there's just no way for the average person to keep up with it or provide the income that these companies need to keep going with how they produce things in the way the global economy is as a whole. Like, it's just not going to happen. So, honestly, there are some IPs that could probably go for going more AA for, like, you know, smaller, more tight, but, like, I mean, Claire Obscure proved it, in my opinion. Like, Claire Obscure was led by a guy who's former Ubisoft, to kind of keep it topical, ironically. Like, I haven't played Claire Obscure yet, but I've heard nothing but good things about that game from the friends I have who've played it and people online who've talked about it. Is Claire Obscure was headed by a guy who was former Ubisoft, who himself said, like, yeah, no, a game like this would take 25 years, metaphorically, to get approved because it's just too risky for the modern industry. And that is another problem. Like, the modern industry doesn't like taking risks. This is just entertainment in general. This is movies. This is games. This is, hell, books, even. They don't like taking risks because risks could mean losses. They would rather take a loss on like a franchise that they know they can just kind of pump content out for than a new IP that's untested, that doesn't have anything behind it, that doesn't have a guaranteed chance of earning them some kind of profit. Oh yeah, no, it's return on, yeah, no, it's ROI. It's ROI. And anything that doesn't have a guaranteed ROI is considered too risky nowadays. Like, if you can't just absolutely make sure you're going to get a good return on investment, it's too much risk for the modern industry. Like, back in the Wild West days of gaming, that's why you had so many new IPs coming out, was because it was the Wild West. Everybody was unproven. There was no, like, standard format. There was no guaranteed odds of success based on the franchise. It was entirely just kind of luck. You just had to kind of invest in a project and hope for the best. And when you have an industry like this one, like games, like movies, where they have these decades-long IPs that have a guaranteed fan base, that definitely have people who just buy the game no matter what, you have a guaranteed way to make sure you have a revenue stream. And it's also why microtransactions have gotten so big too, because why just sell a game for $60 to $70 when you can buy a game for $60 to $70 and then continuously charge people money for things like cosmetic packs, like character skins, and all that stuff? Like, it is a golden goose that I do think at some point is going to stop laying eggs. Which is just, in my opinion, part of the whole problem. So, like, Claire Obscure is a game made with passion by a small group of people, and also some outsourcing, because every industry has to outsource, because, like, I mean, if you have a small team, you're going to have to, like... There's people, I think, insane, because I've seen videos about it. People are like, oh, but Claire Obscure wasn't really made by, like, 33 people. Yeah, no, obviously, they would have to outsource some stuff, because a team of 33 people who are putting their all into it. Oh, yeah, no, actually, Schroeder brings up another good point. Gacha games, too. Gacha games are free to start. Like, that's what I like to call gachas and stuff like that. They are free to start, but Lord, at some point, like, most gacha games, you can say, there are a lot of gacha games that you're free to start, and they'll let you kind of coast along going free to play for a little while, right? Okay, fine, I'll just fight you. If you would... Will you, like, do something other than throw flash bombs? Come on, man. Okay. So, okay. So, gacha games are a good way to kind of talk about the way it goes, right? It's like, they are free to start, and you can probably coast by for a while on, like, the free shit they give you in terms of, like, currencies, gems, whatever the hell they want to call it that day, and, like, the characters you get. Like, you can probably coast by for a while on that stuff. But, eventually, if the gacha game has been poorly designed anyway, you will hit a metaphorical, like, paywall, right? Like, it's a metaphorical paywall because, technically speaking, you don't have to pay. But it'll be a lot faster if you do. You'll get stronger characters, you'll get more materials, you'll get other stuff if you just pay a little bit extra. Like, I've been playing, SD Gundam G Generation Eternal, right? I am relatively decently far into the game currently. I've cleared like the 3rd primary UC stage in that. There's Gundam terminology, don't ignore it. And so far I have managed to totally free to play the game. I have like 6 of the highest rarity units, 1 for free from like when you start the game, and then 5 more from that I've gotten from getting lucky on the gacha banners. But I am absolutely betting that at a point there's going to become where upgrading characters to be as powerful as I can get them to be is going to stop paying off in terms of like, oh, how much I can do by just playing the game myself and not having to spend any money. Now, so far, it hasn't happened because the game is fairly, I won't say generous, but like it does give you a lot of stuff for free. Like whenever you clear a stage full, like with its like a perfect clear where you have like 3 stars, just to put it simply, is you can 3-star clear a full story stage and you'll get like 1,000 gems from like a full clear, and like another 1,000 if you perfect clear all the hard stages, along with the secret fights. So like each main segment of the game can give you like 2k gems totally for free, which is only 1,000 off for a roll, and you've probably gotten enough free gems from just playing the story stages that you could probably have enough to do a 10. So theoretically speaking, by perfect clearing every story segment of G Generation Eternal, you could get a 10 roll out of it. But obviously that necessitates having to constantly deal with an ever-increasing power threshold as you are required to level up your units to do other stuff. So I'm betting at some point, like in every gacha game, there's eventually going to be a point in G Generation Eternal where I hit the metaphorical wall of, well, you could progress, but it's going to take forever to grind. Why not pay a little bit of extra money to get extra diamonds to buy resources from the shop, right? Like, it's one of those gacha games. It's one of those ones where you can buy the character upgrade materials from the shop and do that stuff. Which, yeah, you know, you could theoretically free to play it, but why not when you can just pay gems and get a ton of resources and upgrade your character super fast? Anyway, next I'll tell you a memory. That's enough industry talk. Let's, God, how long was that? I'm gonna check the VOD when I'm done. I'm gonna see just how long I was talking about game industry stuff when I'm done.